Hey everybody, welcome back.
Hello.
We're recording this at like half past midnight because of extraordinary circumstances. But hey, we're recording it in the calendar week of we're supposed to be. Okay, so you were talking to me just before we started recording about how you are just very frustrated with this episode, and I completely understand.
Ugh, where do I even begin?
Uh, well, how about this? Let's start with um an overall summary because I feel like the instead of it doing the way that we have for the other episodes, I think what we should do is we should summarize it uh chronologically. Okay, so let's start with the manga and anime because I think it's kind of important to start there and then move into the live action to kind of explain why they did certain things.
Okay.
So in
So,
the Syrup Village is an arc that notoriously is rated as the worst arc in all of One Piece. It is said to be both, I don't want to say poorly written, but it's just there are some weird problems with the arc that is indicative to early One Piece. And every single time I think about it, I just look at it and go, why? Why was this the choice that you made? And okay, so uh this is where we meet the sharpshooter known as Usopp, who is this like boy who cried wolf type of character who runs around and be annoying. And he's got a it's interesting because manga wise he does not have his iconic weird long nose at this point. He has a long nose, but it's more of like it's just like a weird shaped hook nose, and it's like weird. But then when the anime comes in, you have the design that people more associate with Usopp having, with him having the nose that is very indicative of Pinocchio, where it just sticks out at a 90-degree angle off of his face.
as opposed to normal nose that don't do that?
No, but like it literally looks like someone took a like one of those door stops, the like little I don't like referring to it uh as the little metal uh the little spring that is used to like catch doors. Like it looks like that someone took that and just stuck it onto his face because it sticks out so far. It's just kind of funny, but it's interesting how a lot of this arc I still have like weird memories about it. Like thinking about like the first time I ever watched this arc, and I'm like, oh, it wasn't too bad. And then I sit down and I rewatch it, and I'm like, oh no, this is actually like a bad arc, like overall. So the whole idea is that you have Luffy, Nami, and Zoro, who meets up with this kid, and immediately they're like, "Oh, you're kind of a cool dude," and Luffy instantly recognizes him as being related to Yasop, which is it's weird to say the sharpshooter considering like 80% of Shanks's crew use guns, but he's a guy who on the team is supposed to be like this trick shot master where he's just like, "Oh yeah, it's like I can like do this and I could do this," and it's like it's very clear that like that Yasop is a very much a deadbeat father. But
I
that
mean, I don't know if you can count as deadbeat father. He went off to become a pirate, and I think he assumed if he got rich quickly that you'd raise the kid off that.
He's not as bad as Gon's father in Hunter x Hunter, but close.
Yeah, it's I wouldn't say super close, but still a little crazy.
Uh, and Usopp has a friend named Kaya is a very rich who is a very rich lady in a small town, and it's very interestingly juxtaposed between each other because we find out later on that the reason why they have so much money is that their family owns, I think, several shipyards across the archipelago that they're on. And right now they have several like people in their employment that is running those. And now that Kaya is like getting older, she's supposed to take over, but since she is bedridden for like a lot of the story, she can't really assume proper control over the shipyards. So she's basically being nursed back to health by her head butler Clahodor and all this kind of stuff. Now,
Yeah, she has a severe case of terminal plotitis.
yeah, the I cannot leave my bed disease. Uh I believe in fiction we would call this we would call this the mysterious disease. But the interesting thing is that there are several ways that we are told both in universe and through minor sort of like oh, what's the word? Inference. You have to infer several things that she is being slowly poisoned to death by her head butler. So which is then immediately confirmed that when he meets up with his subordinate Django, which may or may not be spelt with a D at the beginning of it, who knows? Uh, it would be so funny if Django actually does have the will of D. Not gonna lie, that would be very funny, considering that that's not even how it's spelt in the manga. But you know, uh, so you have Django, who is a hypnotist, which for the longest time I thought that the Four Kids version said that he had a devil fruit ability that makes him have hypnotism, but no, he's just some weird hippie in the Four Kids version. Uh, but you have them meeting up, and they just out loud to no one state their intentions that each other should already know. But you kind of get the idea that Kuro, as his name actually is just like he surrounds himself with idiots because he's not really the smartest guy in the room, but he prefers to be that smartest guy in the room. So he surrounds himself with a bunch of idiots that he can like lead around. And it's really funny because like you have Kuro, and I need to bring this up because this happens twice in this arc and it's kind of annoying. Even though I understand that these characters are supposed to be like bigger than life, and you know, bounty posters circulate. It feels weird for them to go, "Oh yeah, we know who Buggy is. Oh, we know who Captain Kuro is." But for some reason you wouldn't be able to identify him with a wanted poster. But so either you know who this person is um and you could identify him with a poster, or because Kuro it was said to have been executed, they don't have his poster in circulation, which was supposed to be like 4 or 5 years ago. That his poster would have been circulating, and then he would have been executed around like 3 years ago.
Yeah,
Like
that sounds about right.
it feels really awkward to be like, oh yeah, we know who this guy is, and then not be able to identify who he is. You know? Where it's like, oh, we know the person by name, but not by face. Even though the way that you would know them by name is the bounty poster, which usually has their face. It's
Well,
a
I mean, that's not entirely true. I mean, Jack the Ripper is a famous example of that. We don't know what he looked like. We just sort of assume, and we just know the name because the name is spoken about in hushed whispers as some unknowable murder legend. The same can absolutely happen for Black Cat Kuro. A name passed on forever.
the interesting thing about this whole thing, and the reason why I decided to talk about this first is so far in the arc, it is okay, but it just says more than show. And a lot of the characters basically have to explain their backstory over and over again. Well, not over again, but like it's really awkward to kind of read it and then it's like, oh yeah, like here are my plans, and it's like what? It's like why are you wording it like this? I don't know why you're doing it like this. It's just a lot of exposition that feels weird. And I totally understand like why you would do it like that, but at the same time it just comes off as like very awkward.
Yeah,
Okay,
I the pacing is also just wrong for this entire arc. From the beginning all the way to the end, it's from the ground.
I I
It
would
doesn't
s-
know what it wants.
I would say that One Piece pacing doesn't get quote unquote good until they actually leave the East Blue. I feel like when they hit the East Blue, only then does the pacing actually feel good.
I wouldn't say that um because the pacing for one of the upcoming arcs before they specifically hit the Grand Line, and I'm not gonna spoil what that is until we get there. Um, that's the specific thing I'm talking about here is the last thing they go to before hitting the Grand Line. I think has a good pacing.
Yeah, I would say that the manga for that arc suffers a little bit, but the anime's pacing is really fantastic for like setting the vibe for that entire arc. But again, I wanted to talk about the manga and the anime first to kind of set the ground for why they had to. I'm going to use the word mangle because it doesn't really follow this arc a lot. So, would you like to give a a moment to moment summary of episode 3 of the live action version uh of this episode?
Sure. Where to start here? So the beginning of the episode starts with Usopp telling a lie, saying that pirates are coming, which is just like in the anime and in the manga, what he does. He he tells lies to rile people up and no one believes him.
I
Though
do like how there is this like time lapse of like him as a young kid doing it and then like him growing older, and it shows that he's been doing it for a while. Like
yeah, but the live action takes such a mean-spirited hand on it. Like he does it and the townspeople are like, "Fuck off, Usopp. Shut up. You're a
yeah, it's
liar."
like
In
they
the
they get a
original they
lot more
they laugh
tired
at
of
him.
him a lot faster. Like
Yeah,
it
it's
seems.
and already we're 2 minutes into the episode. We have an issue. Where the fuck are the kids?
Okay, so there are, I believe they're referred to as the Veggie Patch. The three kids that are named after
Yeah,
vegetable.
there's pepper, onion, and squash, I believe are their names. Or is it pepper, onion, and carrot?
I think it's Carrot. No, because that would be awkward if two characters in One Piece are named the same thing.
That's true. I don't remember them, but I still want them to be there. They're important to Usopp's thing of Usopp has these kids around because being kids with boundless energy and being a man child himself,
By the way,
it's,
have you seen these characters like post time skip? Because they actually do show them in an episode, and it's like, wow, they look like actual characters now.
yeah, hopefully they show up again like later. Um, you know, and all this is going on. We then cut to uh Usopp going to meet Kala and sees Klahadore, and there's a bit of a dialogue there that doesn't really go anywhere, but to be fair, it didn't in the original anyway. Then we cut to Luffy and Nami and Zoro on the ship that they have, and them all complaining about it, and Luffy brings up honestly a really good line that should have been in the original, which is um, Luffy says he's the one who calls them the Straw Hat Pirates, which is another change because the Navy is the one who gives names like that. Um, and Luffy never actually names his crew. In fact, it's not until after the Skypiea arc that someone calls them the Straw Hat Crew to their face. Um, but he calls them the Straw Hat Crew, and he's like, it's got a nice ring to it. And Zoro's like, oh, Demon has a nice ring. I'd use that. And Nami's like, that's not a scary pirate name. And Luffy brings up a good point. Why does a pirate name have to be scary? Which really just shows how Luffy feels about being a pirate. This scene literally does not matter except to have that name drop, which is bullshit and stupid. We cut back to Syrup Village, and Usopp's being a shitter again, and we get a little bit of inkling of something strange with Klahadore, and then we get another scene cut. This time, Buggy?
Okay,
Buggy.
so uh, this is an interesting scene because you could definitely tell that they wanted to keep Jeff Ward throughout this, and they sprinkle in his involvement a lot more than he was in the original the original series. And it's understandable. You have a very charismatic actor and you want to keep him around. And so what do? You get him involved with the Arlong pirates somehow. The way you do this is that you have Arlong as a character be more overly present with this arc. And you kind of connect all of these things together of like these are pirates that are well known that would have met each other at some point. Like as they are kind of all like moving around the East Blue. And I kind of get it of like why these characters would know each other, but at the same time, you also have this awkward thing that you have to kind of ask of old fans to basically just be like, I want you to just roll with it. And some people, like, Gideon, doesn't really like that. Where it's like,
No,
well, you're adding a lot more than you should, and I'm not sure if it's needed.
they're playing their hand too early. Arlong isn't supposed to be a thing yet. We're not supposed to have this overarching plot line in East Blue. That's part of the joy of East Blue is that we're experiencing this sort of disconnected, pathing. We're jumping into stories halfway through because that's when the characters arrive. It doesn't need this like thorough string.
Okay.
Buggy shouldn't even be in one piece. Buggy is supposed to be just feet, hands, and head, and have been launched into the stratosphere to be found by seagulls later, looking for his body, and then later found by Alvita, who now has the slip fruit, and then they show up later. That's supposed to happen way later. He's not supposed to be here. Arlong is not supposed to be mentioned yet. We're not supposed to know about Arlong until the beginning of 2 arcs from now.
Well, okay. So one of the things that I kind of realized that I liked about this is that it does set up Arlong as this like mafia type boss who is going around the East Blue and saying, "No, I control this space." And I kind of like that because it increases his prestige and his overarching power. But again, at the same time, I have a lot of problems with the way that early One Piece is written because it feels really awkward for Nami to basically say, "Hey, I need this money to buy a village," and anyone that's like not really paying attention, they're like, okay, is that gonna come up?" And they don't connect the dots until later, and then they present the information like we're just hearing it the first time. But
It's
with Arlong, with him basically being here, it has that vibe of you have Nami in the at the end of the previous episode, like she is contacting her some kind of third party. And even at this time, even if you aren't like like connecting all the dots, you have Nami being shady about something, which you do kind of get from her actions in the anime and manga, and then you have Arlong who is sitting there. If you're thinking about it, you can connect those dots, but it doesn't really come in importance until the plot actually asks you to start thinking about Arlong as a tangible enemy to the Straw Hats.
I think
Now,
another problem is having this reveal so early is it undercuts an important character moment for Nami at the beginning of the arc that Arlong is supposed to be revealed in, and that is her betraying the rest of the crew, stealing all their stuff, and leaving, and forcing them to come after her despite her repeated claims that she's not involved with any of this.
but yeah,
We have now played the hand too early.
I I don't think that, but then again, I didn't like the way that Nami was written in early One Piece. So it's
And I did.
both of us having problems with the way that they are going to go about with Arlong Pirates, and we are going to get to our overall problems in a later. But for now, it is kind of interesting that he's just kind of sitting there in the background of the plot in the live action a lot earlier than he's supposed to be. And
So
interesting does not mean good. Interesting means is like, oh, you're doing something that I was not expecting.
so as the episode continues, Buggy has been threatened by Arlong. For some reason, acts like a little bitch and schnivels his way out of it, which wasn't a thing that Buggy was known for originally. He didn't really get that until Impel Down. Um,
Basically, they're
when he
making
was
his character a little bit more consistent with how he is
yeah
depicted throughout the whole story.
yeah, but it was a
But I kind
lot
of get
more
you.
interesting. It was a lot more interesting that he only got this sort of snivelly character design after facing people from the Grand Line and realizing that he was really a big fish in a small pond in the East Blue. But so we get through the really awkward scene of the Buggy Arlong near Yowie experience, and Luffy and the crew are now in Sturt Village. They're looking for a better ship, and uh, Luffy already has this look in his eye like he wants Usopp on the team. And they're hanging out in Kala's mansion, and they're getting lost and stuff. And there's a really boring nothing burger scene with Nami, and then it's revealed, oh no, Clawhadore was Black Cat Kuro, and he's here to steal the shipworks and rebuild his armada and go back to the Grand Line and all this other stuff that also doesn't matter.
I don't
And
think
then
that that
Zoro,
was. Uh,
and then
Oddly enough, I don't think him needing the shipyard is part of it, but him wanting
well,
some
in the
kind
manga,
of like. We eventually get into this in the manga and anime, but not really in the live action. That his
yeah,
whole plan is that he just wants to have a bunch of money to live comfortably for the rest of his life. And it's like,
yeah, in the
then what
anime
are you
and
doing
manga,
here?
he's doing it for passive income. In live action, it's implied that he wants to go back to being a pirate, and he needs ships to do that, and he wants to control the shipwrights to make them make an armada for him, which is dumb. But then at this point, another character is very noticeably not present. Live action doesn't have Django.
So I at there is a kind of a cute call to Django at an earlier scene, because the way that so it's clear that like Zoro has this like memory for like, well, I'm used to looking at a bunch of wanted posters, and so like he clearly is going to remember someone like Kuro, even if he's said to have been dead and his wanted poster hasn't been like circulating for the last few years. Like that doesn't really matter. Because like he's gonna remember someone like Kuro, and so especially since there is the poster of it in the safe, and you also have someone like uh someone like Morgan basically like gloating about Kuro in the earlier episode. And so those slight breadcrumbs to Kuro, even though you don't see his face, is understandable why he might actually have that name on his mind. So he goes up to Kuro while he's still like masquerading uh as the butler, and he says, "You know, I think I may have seen you before." He goes, "I don't know how I would have met you." And then he blatantly says, "Are you sure that you were on Mirabelle Island?" Which is the place that Django's solo story from the covers happen. And I'm like, that's kind of cute. I kind of like how they at least tried to put some kind of like acknowledgement of Django in there. But it is
And
kind of
then
fascinating that he's not there. And it's
and then
kind
we
of got
get
this,
to
yeah, it's got this like, why is Django not there? And you kind of connect the dots where it's like, okay, so Mary says to Kuro that it's really awkward for Kaya to put in her like official documents that if anything were to happen to her, everything goes into the management of Kuro, even though there's other people that she has in employment that is managing the other parts of the of the shipbuilding business. But it's like, why would it go to you and not someone like me who's like actually like an accountant and like following all this stuff? Like, where does this go? And I'm like, oh, okay. So they've already done the whole thing of her writing down, I give my stuff to Kuro. So they don't need to involve Django to hypnotize her into writing a will. And
which
so
is
it's like,
dumb because the only reason she'd write him in is because she was hypnotized to do so. It's you remove, you make Kaya's character strictly worse to cut out a character.
Yeah. Like, I think it's a good time to note that when I was actually looking through the episodes, this is the only episode of the entire series that dips lower than an 8 on IMDb. It is currently sitting at a 7.7 as of when I took all these notes. So, like, this is one of the lowest rated episodes, and you can kind of tell why. There's a lot of like weird things that you kind of have to like blink in and go, okay, I guess that's what's happening. And that is for both an old fan and someone who has no idea what is coming up. Really not gelling well with this episode. And there are several factors to this whole thing of like why you wouldn't exactly gel with this. But I think it's a good
So
time to talk about something that people who aren't fans of One Piece really did gel with that some fans of One Piece didn't. And that is the side story that has been going on throughout the last episode and a half up to this point. And that is the fact that we had actually been keeping up with Kobe the whole time. Because if you were just reading the manga and watching the anime, the only amount of like any form of Kobe that you see is in his cover story where you see him and Helmeppo getting closer as they're referred to as chore boys, but their actual ranking in the military would be recruit or private, depending on like how far into their training they would go. So you're so it's like, okay, so what happens? And it's like, well, in the cover story, you have Morgan, who is basically kept under watch by Ripper, I believe is his name, which for people who don't know who Ripper is, in episode 1 of season 2, he's the guy who is in control of the base in that scene. So, just so you know, that's who I'm talking about. So, Ripper is the guy who takes control over the base shortly after he leaves. And in the cover story, you have a vice admiral who is in control of the East Blue show up to take Morgan into custody. And he escapes for a little bit. He takes Helmeppo hostage for a little bit. And in the anime, this is a character moment for Helmeppo to basically say, I will never be like my father. And it's kind of a cool character moment for him as a whole. But the interesting thing is that the way that they do this is they stretch out that cover story as a B plot to the entire arc. And it's actually kind of interesting to see that kind of get weaved in because one, we know that Vice Admiral Garp is there in the East Blue at this time. And this is what Kobe and Helmeppo are up to during this time span. So it's interesting to see this get looped in with everything. But as we're going to get into in the next episode, this causes some interesting plot problems that I feel like that the live action does a really good job at managing, even though it's a little awkward to kind of explain. No, this plot point doesn't get brought up for like another like 140 episodes. Not sorry, 240 episodes.
I think another problem with this episode, ignoring the whole Kobe thing, because again, you've completely ruined the special surprise reveal during the Water 7 arc when they show back up And then Garp shows up and reveals his relationship to Luffy, which shocks everyone, and reveals Luffy's father, and all this other stuff. It's super cool, and they've ruined it because they played their fucking hand too early. But another issue with this episode is something that normally in the first couple arcs is played correctly, is played incorrectly here, and that is the warfing of Zoro. Zoro is shown to be extremely powerful, so the only way to show that what they're up against is strong is that Zoro has to be taken out like a bitch, and in this case, he's taken out by getting a bottle smashed over his head.
Okay, so in the live action, they basically like have I forget what their names are in the manga, but they are these two siblings that basically act as if Django is his first mate. These two are basically like right under them when it comes to the hierarchy of their ship. And so you have Sham and Bucci, uh which are these two cat pirates who work directly under him. And they're the only like notable members of the Black Cat Pirates. So they include them as basically working them into the staff uh at the mansion, which replaces two anonymous bodyguards who basically stand outside the gates that basically don't do their job and uh just let Usopp go every once in a while, but like it's like we don't really get their names, they're not really that important overall. And to replace them kind of with two named characters is an interesting call. But you have Bucci and Sham, which Bucci is now like the chef, the chef and like manager of the kitchen. Uh, and then you have Sham, which is more like a all-purpose like groundskeeper type of character. And basically, when Zoro goes, "I know who you are. I'm gonna take you out," Sham breaks a bottle over his head, and as both of them reveal the fact that they're half cat, and
Which is dumb and
to
stupid and isn't part of the original.
yeah, it was like I'm not really sure how much of the Black Cat Pirates are actually cats or just like weirdly cosplaying as cats half the time.
None of them, not even Kuro, has cat powers.
Which is interesting because in the Viz translation of the manga, he refers to them as my sea wolves, which is a very interesting, probably mistranslation of what he's saying.
It feels like they tried to go one step higher than salty sea dogs, so they went with fucking granulated sea wolves or some shit.
Uh, and and so they're like, well, we're gonna have to get rid of Zoro, and so they take Mary's body, and they take Zoro's body, and they basically just throw them down into a well. And I'm like, I'm sitting there the first time watching this episode, and I do the Leonardo DiCaprio point going, wait a second, this is how they're doing him getting stuck in the weird syrup trap from the episodes. Which is like the most insulting thing for Zoro, where he's just stuck at the bottom of a hill because Usopp decided that he was going to like set up some traps for the Black Cat Pirates if they tried to get close to the village, and they accidentally set up all of these traps on the wrong side of the island. So they realize their problem and they have to run to the other port. And Zoro gets stuck at the bottom of the hill because of this trap. And this combined with Luffy not being able to make it to the destination properly sets this whole situation up to where for the longest time, you have just Nami, who hasn't really been important in too many of the fights, and Usopp, the new guy, against the entire army of the Black Cat pirates, which I basically, every single time it happens, look at it and just kind of blink and just go, wait. It's like, we're not having either of the two main characters fight these guys, and this is a problem that One Piece runs into even in modern day, where you have like the big three names on the ship, and they have so much aura about them that the second that they enter the battle, they win. It was like, uh, so you kind of have to distance them, the like head fighters as far back as possible. And this is like not just a One Piece thing, this is a manga thing where it's like, hey, where's Ichigo? Oh, he's predisposed right now, which is why all of the side characters have their own little mini fights so that we can delay the actual major fight until later. Like this is just a problem with shonen story writing as a whole.
Yeah,
And
but
it's an incredibly awkward thing in the original series that oddly enough kind of turns into something fascinating in episode 4. But we can talk about that when we get to that, because the whole idea is that they need to get a new ship because the dinghy that they stole from Buggy, that is canonically the ship that Nami was using up until this point of the manga, is springing a leak, and they can't just use this sloop, as they call it. They can't just keep using this sloop forever, so they have to get a new ship. And this is found by Kobe and Helmeppo, or at least like some scouts. And of course, this is where Luffy does this is what my Jolly Roger needs to look like, but I have really bad art art skills. And they instantly look at it going, yeah, I think this is Luffy. And it's like, well, we need to go and retrieve him over there. So just make sure that the pirates that are there are brought to justice. So while Usopp is doing the no one believes me running through town part of The Boy Who Cried Wolf, and he's just sitting there having a flashback to his mother dying, which I feel like is probably like the worst acted scene in the entire season.
it's also unnecessary. It wasn't needed in the manga or anime, so it wasn't there. They just added it
No,
in here as like a thing.
it was like the actual full scene is in the series, but I feel like the addition to it is not as needed. Especially in the live action version. You're just including it to basically show that that's why his mom isn't around. And you have this moment where he's like sitting there and he's crying, and now you have Kobe and Helmeppo show up saying, "Oh, okay, we can take care of your problem." And for longtime fans, they're instantly put on guard because they're like, "Wait, Kobe and Helmeppo are at Sur Village, and Garp is just sitting outside. This is gonna get really weird." It's like it immediately puts older fans on the back foot when it comes to their interpretation of this whole arc. Along with it being the worst written arc in the series, along with some weird, like, stilted dialogue throughout it. There's a reason why this is the worst reviewed episode of either season. Uh, but yeah, let's I already alluded to it, but I view this is my my least favorite scene in that that the flashback to his mother is my least favorite scene in this just because of the way that it just has very odd writing and pacing, and I feel like that if they had enough time to do a reshoot, they probably should have. But again, a lot of technical problems when the when this show was about to come out was hamstrung by uh, the acting strikes at the time. So understandable why they couldn't go back in and like fix certain scenes, and the editors, the freelance editors just had to do what they were working with. But uh, to include my favorite scene of the live action, there is a moment where Luffy and Nami are talking about the logistics of how are we going to pay for a ship because we don't have any money. And Luffy goes, uh, Kai will probably just give us the ship. And Nami is like, I have absolutely no belief that a rich person that lives in this house is going to just give us a ship. And Luffy basically makes her a bet saying, we will get that ship either way. So we do it my way first, and if they can't do it, you win, and we'll do it your way. And it's like, okay. And it's this neat character dynamic between Luffy and Nami that kind of shows like the dynamics of their leadership between each other, because uh Luffy spiritually is the captain of the ship, but in reality, like, Nami does carry a lot of weight on the in the crew when it comes to like actually like piloting the ship. And this comes up when they actually hit the Grand Line, but Nami is a lot closer to being the actual like pilot and captain of the ship than Luffy is sometimes. It's just that Luffy is the one that points them in the direction that that he wants them to go, and as the navigator, she goes, "I will comply, and we will get there in the way I want to." And their dynamic is actually shown pretty well in this scene. Although I will say, a good second place contender is when they're all trying on clothes, and the asexual that Luffy is asked, "How do I look in this dress?" And he gives a thumbs up, saying, "You look like Nami." And then she's like, I can't deal with you." And then Zoro shows up saying, "I'm wearing all black, so you can't wear an all black outfit." And she's like, "You two are the worst. I hate both of you."
See, that's the kind of One Piece humor that I'm there for. Just people being goofy.
uh, so what was your least favorite scene?
As much as I don't like playing their hand too early with Garp, I loved the scene of Garp and Kobe playing Go.
Yeah, it's a really good scene because it shows that like Kobe, the reason why Kobe is the way that he is that he has a lot of hesitation because he has a lot of fear behind him being a very skittish person. And so Garp is like, "No, you're an intelligent person, so I'm going to teach you how to play this board game and then force you to have like a like chess clock right next to you where you have to make as many decisions as fast as possible as you can." And it's forcing Kobe to like think on his feet, which is the exact thing that he needs to become a good Marine captain.
Yeah, no, it's a great scene. I just think it came way too early, like 150 chapters too early.
But I feel like that if you would have done a scene like that in Water 7, it already would have been way past where he already would have been at that time. So showing this like slow graduation from timid Kobe from episode 1 into what we are eventually going to see is kind of cool.
I feel like they could have done it as like a quick snippet backstory in Water 7, being like, I trained under Garp. He showed me how to make decisions, and you could have like cut to that real quick. But it's I like the scene as much as I don't like the scene. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah,
love how it's shot and what it represents. I don't like the fact that it exists because it shouldn't be here. Garp is not in the story yet. Why is he here?
and I'm
My least
guessing.
favorite scene
Uh,
in the episode is Zoro getting knocked out with a glass bottle because, like I said, they're warfing him. They're doing stuff with other characters to beat Zoro to show how strong they are. And the only times this works really well is the 3 times that Zoro gets warfed in actual One Piece. And that is the fight against Mihawk, the fight in Arlong, and the fight against Ryuma. In
I
which case he
I
is
would say
actually
that
being outclassed.
yeah, I would say that like Oda leading into why is Luffy not here? Well, Luffy needed to get taken out by a bad guy, so he is basically like slowly walking to the battle with weights on his feet. Like that's the way that Oda like gets Luffy slowly into the battle. The way he manages Sanji is that Sanji gets distracted. The way he manages Zoro is that Zoro gets lost. And so having these three characters vanish into the story for the first little bit so that the side characters get a little bit of action before the main stuff happens is just the way that like that's supposed to go. And so forcing Zoro into the bottom of the well is not really too much of a problem for me, but I could definitely understand why it's a problem.
Yeah, it's an issue that they got rid of um pretty handedly by actually having characters deserve their strength and not have it be shown through, beating up Zoro every time so that, Zoro becomes a punching bag.
Yeah, because that's what Chad becomes in Bleach, where it's like, well, he's a really strong, powerful character, so if the second place person on a villainous crew can take out Chad, oh no, he must be really strong. Let's throw Renji at him so that Renji could job for a little bit before he actually takes him out. You know,
Or loses and have to has Ichigo come and save him.
again, when you job in Bleach, it looks really bad. Uh,
Yeah, ask Renji, Rukia, Uryu,
anyone
most of the
Soifon fights.
visors, most of the visors,
Just saying,
um,
like tangential,
half.
yeah, tangential in the Bleach. I was reminded about a scene in the Bount arc where there is one of the Bounts basically goes, "I have a really cool ability," and then Soifon does her, "I strike the same place twice," and then you die from infinite poison. And I'm sitting there going, Soifon, you don't even get this ability off in the regular series.
She got it
The
for one dude.
you got it on one dude in a filler arc
She
who
got her build to work in one niche scenario, and now will never take it off.
it's just really funny because it's like, listen, if you job to Soifon, you deserve to be called the jobber of this team. And
Biggest bitch award.
there's a guy on this team who his whole ability is I make snakes come out of my hand, and it's like, how did he get taken out? Ichigo walked into the room.
He just exploded on pure Reishi killing him.
But yeah, it's kind of
So
a
I
bad
think
scene overall, so I get it.
it's score time, don't you?
Yeah. So let's start with manga ratings for chapters 23 to 26, 27, somewhere around there. I wanted to stop at specifically when Zoro got stuck into the syrup trap when it comes to the manga. So
So it's
everything up to that
semi-analogous.
scene. Huh?
So it's semi-analogous to
Yeah.
the live action because
Even
we're
though
entering this huge variant split of diverging timelines.
yeah.
Time traveler moves a chair, and suddenly this is what we have as One Piece now.
Yeah. So what do you rate uh the manga?
Like a really low bronze.
Yeah, it's like again, it's really awkward to be like, "Oh yeah, One Piece, the greatest series of all time. The first 3 arcs are bronze." Uh I I'm going to say bronze as well. This part of the manga might be my stone for the manga. I'm going to have to think about it a little bit more, but definitely it is hard set into bronze. It's probably going to be my like least favorite
Like
part of the manga as a whole.
it's like the litmus test. You have to be better than Syrup Village.
Yeah, it's like I think most people kind of agree that like the second you get through Baratier, if you are liking the series, you are hooked forever.
Oh yeah, Baratie
Because
is such a huge step up. I'm so excited for us to get there.
so anime wise, uh which is episodes 9 through 11,
Stone.
you would actually put those episodes of the anime as stone?
Yes. The I don't know what went on, but if you go look at the and not the remade episodes, not like the episode of Luffy or anything like that. If you go look at the original release episodes, for some reason the Syrup Village has such horrible quality. Like everything has way too thick of outlines and sloppier fill-ins. It almost feels like a western cartoon.
Huh. I which is weird because I would have said that like because the anime actually manages to cram these kind of boring uh the this boring part of the manga uh into only about like 2.5 episodes basically, uh 3, uh around like 2.5 to 3.5 episodes. I actually was going to give it a silver, but now that you mention it, I am probably going to give it a bronze, but I would probably put it above Orange Town just slightly by its pacing. Because the thing that I really like about the anime version of Syrup Village is that it does have pretty good pacing overall. Uh, Now, what do you rate the Netflix version of episode 3 of Syrup Village?
I'm gonna give you three guesses.
Are you gonna want to hard set it onto it being stone right now and not wait until you get to episode 4?
Yes, absolutely. With with and I'll bring this up next week on the podcast, but without Django, we don't get the really neat scenes of Luffy getting hypnotized and literally bodying a ship.
Uh, Fair. I would say though that my reason for not giving it stone right now is that I kind of need to think on one scene from a later episode, not really of uh not really per se of the second part of Cert Village. I need to think about the way that I feel about episode 8 of season 1, because there are some parts of episode 8 that I actively dislike. Not just like oh it's like a little bit it's a little bit lackluster here or that. It's like there are scenes in episode 8 that I dislike the way that they did it. And it might actually be the most upset that I am going to get out of any of the current 16 episodes.
And that's saying something.
Uh, yeah, I think that's good. Uh, all I have to do is basically just move like one thing on the actual like sheet that I currently have. Uh,
Yeah.
so
For
it
me, Syrup Village is going to remain the lowest of the low for the entire series. I can't think of anything upcoming that is near the level of, and I'm going to say it, the level of disrespect.
I I don't think that like overall like I don't think that there is a terrible episode of the Netflix version in my opinion, but I understand like the way that they went about this arc is half budget restrictions to we need to have this indoors so that we don't have outdoor shots, and half of it is how do we fix an already bad arc. And so it's a mixture of multiple things. Did you have did you have any final thoughts? Uh
My
did
final thoughts on this is, as always, just go watch the actual manga. Stop giving the live action views. Stop giving Netflix money. Make them learn that adaptations need to stop being, and we need one-to-one recreation so there's no more of this stupid putting characters in too early, changing how they're here shenanigan.
honestly, I kind of like what Wit Studios is set to do with the One Piece, with their version of One Piece, where they're trying to harness that like watercolor vibe that like a lot of the early One Piece had, but just pull that up to modern anime standards and make each episode about like a tankobon in weight. So about like eight issues of the manga is going to be a singular episode. And the fact that they're doing it that way is kind of neat, and I kind of want to see how they do that because I have a distinct feeling that that could be hit or miss depending on how you look at things.
Well, when it comes out eventually, we'll have to put it on this list as
Yeah,
another comparison because we're about to be living in a world where there are 4 adaptations of the same story.
yeah. Speaking of which, episode as of the recording of this, episode 1 of season 2 of the anime just came out. I say that facetiously, but it's they finally made it to Elbath in the anime. Did you happen to glance at that?
Not really, because, well, I just mostly go with the manga at this point.
Yeah, it's weird because like a lot of the times I'm like the anime of One Piece is oddly lackluster sometimes, but I at least pay attention to the way that people get excited about the anime because for some people they only watch the anime when it comes to stuff.
Which is fine, you know?
Anyway, I think that's good enough for now. We'll see all of y'all next time. When we finish up Syrup Village and get to the most the most awkward plot sequence in all of the in all of these 2 seasons. See y'all later, everybody. Goodbye.
Goodbye.